Are there other cursed spirits like Rika in JJK that were created by curse users? Yes and no. Let's talk about it. All right, first let's talk about what Rika actually is. And she's what's known as a vengeful cursed spirit, which is a cursed spirit that's born from someone when they pass away. This is different than a normal cursed spirit like Dagon, for example, because Dagon was just born from cursed energy, from the negative emotions and collective fear of the ocean and water. When that reached a certain boiling point, enough negative emotion had accumulated that Dagon just formed, right? So no person involved in Dagon, Rika involved in Rika. Now, not everyone who dies can become a vengeful cursed spirit, otherwise we would have millions of Rikas running around, and we don't. So what else needs to be in place to give this a chance to happen? And there are two primary factors. The first is there needs to be a tremendous source of cursed energy present at the death. Either meaning the person who died was a sorcerer or a curse user, or there was one nearby, like in Rika's case, Yuta Okotsu. The second thing that needs to be in place is that the person who dies cannot be killed with cursed energy. They have to die by some sort of normal mean. And in Rika's case, she was hit by a car. So here, she was killed without cursed energy, and Yuta Okotsu's tremendous amount of cursed energy being present at the scene accidentally cursed her and created the vengeful cursed spirit Rika. So with all of that established, what other vengeful cursed spirits are out there like Rika? And by my best count, I think we've heard mention of 7 in the series. And to kick things off, let's talk about the one that's related to Yuta and also Gojo, because we know that they share an ancestor in Sugiwara Michizane, who is one of the 3 great vengeful spirits of Japan. Those 3 being, and please forgive my pronunciation here, but Taira no Masakado, Emperor Sutoku, and then of course Sugawara no Michizane. So all 3 of them are vengeful cursed spirits within the canon of JJK. But what's fun is they're also real-life historical and mythological figures in Japan. They're yokai, so that's why Gege kind of used that idea within his story. And beyond just that one mention from Gojo in Jujutsu Kaisen 0, we don't really know anything about these 3. But there's some fun fan theories out there, and we know that Michizane was related to Gojo, so some people think that the 3 great vengeful spirits are what ultimately led to the 3 big clans in modern-day Jujutsu society. And then the only other one we know for sure is this guy. And I'm not going to say his name because this video is spoiler-free, and I'm going to keep it that way, but he became a vengeful cursed spirit much like Rika did, except he was born of his own cursed energy as opposed to someone else's, like Okotsu with Rika. And then we've got a couple that might be, but we basically don't have hard confirmation, and that is 2 of the cursed spirits in Geto's arsenal. The first one being this one that we saw Toji fight against, and the second one being this lady that Geto used against Yuta Okotsu. And I think she also made an appearance back in Hidden Inventory as well. So both of these are based on other yokai from Japanese folklore. So that's why some people think that they are vengeful cursed spirits as opposed to just regular cursed spirits. And then, of course, Rika herself would make 7. So if there's any other ones that y'all know of that I forgot, definitely let me know. Now, finally, I want to give a shout out to Charles who inspired this video. Thank you so much for the support, man. And as you can see here, a final little question he tacked on was, how strong would a curse technique be that could create vengeful cursed spirits like this? And it would be insanely strong. And I think the closest approximation we have to that is Geto and curse spirit manipulation. Like we saw, he potentially has 2 vengeful curse spirits in his arsenal already. He was trying to get Rika. So somebody that could create that type of power would be Geto to the next level, right? Because Geto couldn't create the spirits himself. He had to defeat them and then tame them. But if we hypothetically had somebody out there that could like legitimately just create them with their technique, that would be nasty, especially if they could then control them afterwards. But even if they couldn't, like assuming this was a bad guy with the technique, they could definitely cause some havoc, right? Like if you're just making Rikas over and over, it would be nuts. I think the closest thing we could get to this in the series wouldn't be somebody with a technique that could do that, but would just be someone who was evil and had a bunch of cursed energy and went out there and intentionally murdered people to try and create vengeful cursed spirits. Like he would go kill people with normal means and hope that either his own or their cursed energy would then spawn a vengeful cursed spirit. And I do think it's a bit more than just checking off those two boxes, because we know in Yuta's case, he cursed Rika because he didn't want her to die and he still loved her, right? So I think you do need like an actual emotion and curse in the equation, but still, like I do think a sadistic or psychopathic enough person maybe could go out there and successfully create some vengeful cursed spirits, especially if they targeted people that they thought, maybe were going to enact a curse themselves. Anyway, I'm getting long-winded, but point is that would be incredibly powerful as a curse technique. And now I've got a terrifying thought for you. What if Sukuna became a vengeful curse spirit? We saw how strong Rika was based on Yuta Okotsu's cursed energy, and Sukuna has over twice as much. So, like, humanity would be absolutely cooked. Which brings me to this comment I got from Les that says, in a way, Kenjaku saved the world. Really, this is almost the only way that Sukuna wouldn't have become a cursed spirit, because no one would have been able to beat Sukuna, meaning he would have died naturally. In a world where he never became a cursed object and turned into a cursed spirit after death, would humanity survive? And likely no, assuming that Sukuna's purpose would be to wipe out humanity. Like, we know Rika and the other three vengeful spirits exist, and they're not necessarily just on like a bloodbath rampage, right? But in the spirit of your question, like, could they defeat him? Probably not. That would be a terrifying entity. But what I'll say is, there's no guarantee that Sukuna would have become a cursed spirit even if he had died naturally. But I certainly think there's an interesting case to make that he would have, because if he had just lived out his life naturally in the Heian era and then passed away, he might have died with regret, thinking that he never had a true opponent or a real way to showcase his strength, right? And maybe that desire or curse, if we can call it that, would have transformed him into a vengeful cursed spirit when he passed away, forced to roam around looking for a strong opponent for all time. Like, it's a cool spin-off, I think, there. But yeah, that would be bad but awesome. And then finally, speaking of Sukuna, I got this question from Rudra, who asked, could you use domain amplification in conjunction with a curse tool to bypass the limitless? So if Sukuna had still had Kamutoke, could he have used that to strike Gojo? And this is a really interesting question that I don't feel like I can give you a confident answer on, because we just never had a chance to see that type of thing interact, right? But my gut instinct would be to say it wouldn't work, because we know that there is the specific contingency that you can't use domain amplification and your curse technique at the same time. And that's not to say that using a curse technique is equivalent to using a curse tool, but in terms of like design principle behind the power structure in this verse, it feels like you could only do one or the other. Like, your domain amplification is essentially an empty barrier around your hand, right? That the curse technique then gets sucked into. So if that hand was also wielding Kamutoke, could you bypass the limitless and then have the Kamutoke lightning strike go through as well? It could conceivably work, but again, just in terms of like what Gege was going for with domain amplification, I feel like it wouldn't be fair if a curse tool could go through it so long as you were using domain amp, because like you the person are using domain amplification, so you the person can strike through, right? You would need to like have the tool use domain amplification, which doesn't really make sense, but if we think about it that way, then the tool would not be able to use its curse technique, because you can't use domain amp and curse techniques at the same time. So long-winded kind of maybe there, but if you made me pick, I would say it wouldn't work. But if it did work, I could see why. That's all for this one, y'all. Thank you guys so much for the questions, and thank you for watching.